1 week ago, Thomas Tuchel got sacked from Chelsea in, I think the majority of people, including myself, believe was one of the most harsh sackings in history of football. Thomas Tuchel played his 100th game against Dynamo Zagreb, losing 1-0 in the Champions League, and got sacked the morning after. And I'm pretty sure every Chelsea fan disagreed with the sacking. I've seen so many videos on TikTok, like emotional goodbyes and all that. Yeah, I think it was definitely harsh. I think when it comes to sackings, I always think it really depends what sort of type of personality you are. I think when you're someone who thinks he probably should have been sacked, you're probably someone a bit more impatient, ruthless, feels the pressure a little bit more, having to make that decision. And by the way, none of these sides are wrong, in my opinion. I think they both, none of them are right, none of them are wrong, I think. I think if you lean towards the other side, which is probably the side that I am on, you're probably more of a calm, sort of caring, indecisive though person. Because I think if you don't sack him, then you might be someone who thinks, I'm not sure what to do here. But yeah, I'd say I'm someone who probably cares what the manager actually feels. Now he doesn't have a job and I feel bad for him. I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people lean towards this side. But obviously Todd Boehly carrying on the Abramovich tradition of being ruthless, being very ruthless. In his time at Chelsea, in those 100 games he played, he won 63, drew 19 and lost 19. I can now see that the win percentages are actually the wrong way around. So the Premier League win percentage is 55%, the all comps is 63%. But you look at that record in all comps, and it's very good. There's no doubt he did a very good job at Chelsea. Obviously, in his time, came in 2021 and won the European treble, winning the Champions League against Man City, Pep Guardiola's Man City, the Super Cup and the Club World Cup. And I'd actually go on to say it's one of the most impressive Champions League victories of all time. In my opinion, I think it was completely down to the manager. I don't think any other manager in world football actually would have gone to Chelsea and done that. He was absolutely insane in 2021 for Chelsea. Definitely one of the best ever managers, and creating history, winning them the Champions League for the second time. Also winning 2 Manager of the Months as well, one in October 2021 and the other in March 2021, also proving that 2021 was really Thomas Tuchel's year. He really transformed that Chelsea team into, winners. They weren't winners under Lampard, lost the FA Cup final as well against Arsenal. But Thomas Tuchel really took them to a new level. Let's have a look at Thomas Tuchel in the 21-22 season, his second season and his first full season at Chelsea. Now, as we can see here in the table, he finished, I would say, where Chelsea was supposed to finish. I think they could have made definitely a bigger title charge, and I think the stats could have been a bit more impressive. However, to finish third, to get to 2 cup finals, only losing them on penalties, being very unlucky, and also in the Champions League, eventually losing to the winners. And I would say individual errors being the reason they went out to Real Madrid. You look at that Mendy mistake against Benzema, maybe a different story. And he also went away to the Bernabeu, winning, which is something that not many teams in Premier League history have done before. If we look at the table here, we can see that there is a clear gap between Man City, Liverpool and Chelsea. How many points is that? 18. Before the season started, many of them had Chelsea being the winners of the Premier League. However, for me, personally, I do think that I think there's big reasons they didn't challenge for the league. I think when you look at the Lukaku situation, the reason people were saying Chelsea were going to be Premier League title challengers or winners is because of Lukaku. They finally had that number 9 that they've been craving, despite Havertz getting a Champions League final goal. I think everyone thought he'd score 25, 30 goals in that Chelsea team. But Tuchel, it's not Tuchel's fault that Lukaku went and done the most idiotic interview I've ever seen in my life. Who goes to an interview about 5 games into the season and says that you didn't even want to end up at the club you're at right now? It's absolutely idiotic, in my opinion. You know, he was saying that he would have rather Barca or Bayern. What is he playing at? I think you also have to consider the fact that Chelsea were actually in a title race before their wing-backs got injured. You know, both full-backs getting injured and Chilwell getting a really massive injury. And, you know, last season they didn't have Cucurella to come in for Chilwell. It was just Chilwell. I think it would have made a massive difference if the two full-backs were there. They looked really, really good. Even though I've stuck up for Tuchel, I don't know, who knows. I think obviously there are things that have gone against him as well. You know, I don't think it's been all plain sailing at Chelsea. If you look at these stats, you know, I've got on the table for you right now. I mean, it's glaring the downtrend after 50 games. I mean, you look at every single stat on here shifts enormously the other way. I mean, you know, let's just start. I mean, he won 32 games in his first 50, which is extremely high, and then only winning 28, which is still good, of course, but it's nowhere near the level of 32. I think for me, the biggest one is Chelsea's defence, actually, because when Tuchel came in, he made that defence so solid, so solid. And even when the season started, the 21-22 season started, they had the best defence in the league about 15, maybe 13, 12 games into the season. However, something has clearly happened, because to go from 24 goals against in your first 50 games to 53, to jump half is, I mean, very dramatic. I mean, how has that even happened? I think when you look at like things, the Arsenal game, for example, just players doing really silly mistakes. It just seemed like he didn't have that sort of grip on his team like he did in the first 50, and they were losing focus really, really easily. Just nowhere near as solid at the back. I mean, look at those goals against per game, 0.48 to 1.06 in the last 50, to jump again half and a bit more. It's huge, absolutely massive. I mean, it's just such a dramatic shift in form compared to the first 50. I mean, you look at goals per game, they were averaging 2.53 compared to 1.74. Huge jump again. But what actually, I mean, you look at those first 50 games for Tuchel, and he's obviously a Chelsea legend with those sort of stats. I mean, to get 24 clean sheets in 50 games is unbelievable. Honestly, unbelievable. What an achievement that is. Obviously only 18, which is actually still good, really, isn't it? In your last 50. But it's the other things, you know, the win percentage being 56% compared to 64%. I mean, that's a dramatic difference as well. That's title challenging difference. You know, when 64%, I think you're up there with the Cities, with the Liverpools, or just a little bit off. 56%, you're not. You're with the Spurs, Arsenal's, Man United's, around that position. I think let's go into this season, the 22-23 season. Obviously, this is the year he got sacked. And let's have a look at the results so far. And I think for me, the biggest thing is probably inconsistency. You look at that game versus Everton-Chelsea, it took a Jorginho penalty to win the game, you know, against a very poor Everton team that day, I would say. But they got the win. Then you look Chelsea versus Tottenham. Chelsea always turn up against Tottenham. Personally, I knew that there would be a bit of a drop-off after that game. I always see Chelsea perform against my team every single time, but they were fantastic in that game versus Spurs, but yet drew. You look at Leeds, I mean, things with the Leeds game, if Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Sterling take those chances, it's 2-0 Chelsea in 10 minutes. You know, it's a completely different game. You look at Mendy, if he doesn't make that mistake, what happens? But I will say that Leeds were massively the better team that day against Chelsea. Not good enough at all from Tuchel or the players, but then they beat Leicester with 10 men the next game. What? Then they lose to Southampton the game after that, and then they beat West Ham. And you know, you look at these games, different things happen. Like the West Ham game, they should have drew ultimately, and yeah, really, I would say a lot of inconsistency in Chelsea so far this season, and of course losing that game to Dynamo Zagreb as well, not good enough. I think when I was looking at that Chelsea team before the season started, I was saying it has to finish. I think that team still has to finish top 4, and they haven't. So I think Tuchel this year has under-delivered, definitely. I think the thing is with Tuchel is it's 6 games in, and credit in the bank. Does that mean anything? For me it does. But what I would say, I've been so wrong about these sackings in the past. Saying they're harsh, and usually they do end up the right decision. It's unfortunate because managers, they get a tough time. They're no longer in the job. But usually it does end up being the right decision. I would have personally given more time. I think he deserved it. I think he's a great manager. If Tuchel hadn't have been Chelsea manager and Graham Potter just got sacked from Chelsea, we'd be saying, Tuchel would be a great manager for Chelsea. I think that's now bring Graham Potter in the discussion, as he has been confirmed Chelsea manager. We've all had a few days to digest the sacking, the appointment. Just look at that Brighton XG, 11.264. Now that is huge, first of all, and 5.66 away is actually so impressive from Graham Potter, honestly. It's a difference of 5.6. That is absolutely massive. And let's not forget, he's not at Man City, he's not at Liverpool, he's not at Arsenal, Spurs, even at Chelsea. He's at Brighton. His best player is Pascal Gross or Trossard or Caicedo or Lallana or Welbeck or Webster. I mean, the players there are nowhere near the Chelsea players. And look at the way he's outperforming Thomas Tuchel here. It's unbelievable. What a manager. As we can see, Thomas Tuchel 8.41 XG4 and against 9.16. So he's actually in the negatives compared to Graham Potter's 5.6 in the positive. I think it shows the drastic difference in managers this year. Graham Potter really is outperforming him by some distance. Graham Potter's also getting 1.8 points per game. And the thing is, it's so early though, isn't it? This is the sort of thing we have. Is yes, he's outperforming him. He's got 1.8 points per game compared to Tuchel's 1.3. But it's 6 games into the season. By the 12th, it could be completely switched. That's the thing. This is the thing with sackings, and this is why I think it's just so harsh. You had to give him more time, in my opinion. One thing I actually found interesting was the shots, and Chelsea are actually taking more shots now. One thing actually interesting is you see that there's less shots, but he's actually got 5+ XG, 4. So Brighton are actually creating much, much, much better chances than Chelsea, or getting into areas where you would expect them to score more often. So often we say with Chelsea, it's actually the players not being clinical enough or whatever, but it's actually, I read an XG sort of thing the other day, and it's actually, so if you have less shots, but you have a higher XG, you're actually getting into better positions. So Brighton are actually getting, not just being more clinical, they're getting into better positions than Chelsea to score as well. Now, one thing I would say is when we look at the Tuchel lineup, this is what we sort of expect. We expect this 3-4-3, essentially with the two left attacking, the left attacking mid with the right attacking mid. And for me, this team is more suited to Graham Potter, in my opinion, because Tuchel. Well, one thing I would say actually, and one reason I have another problem with this sacking is you've just gave Tuchel a striker and you've let him have him for 58 minutes. So we knew Tuchel was struggling with this, scoring goals and all that. More, I'd actually just say defensive issues recently as well. But you've just given him a new striker, yet you've just only sacked him. For me, the board are actually the ones that have come out looking the worst of all this. Not Tuchel, not Potter, it's the board, definitely. First of all, spending the most money in Premier League history for Tuchel, giving him so many different players. Cucurella, Fofana, Koulibaly, Aubameyang, all these players, just to then sack him 6 games in. But you've also given him a striker, finally, and one that he's had a good relationship with in the past, and yet you've sacked him after having one half of football with him. But yeah, this is the sort of lineup I'd expect from Tuchel. I think it was just, I'm not sure. I mean, it just wasn't working. It really wasn't. You know, when you see Mount there, I don't know if Mount was liking that position. Havertz on his own up front, really, and I'm not sure that was working. Yeah, I wasn't liking it. I think Sterling has actually played quite well. But I think when you look at Kante in there, I think Tuchel was so reliant on Kante, and this is one of the reasons why Chelsea have gone downhill, is because Kante's always injured now. He's a very injury-prone player in the last few years because he's getting older. How much he does for the team, you'd expect it. But Kante is so essential in this Chelsea team for Tuchel that without him, it's nowhere near the same level. When we look at how Graham Potter lines up, which is something a little bit more like this, I'd probably guess maybe Gallagher out. Obviously, he will put Kante in when he's injured, when he's fit, sorry. But I think he can rely on other players like Gallagher, Kovacic, his wing-backs, the two up top, Sterling, Havertz or Aubameyang in there. I think he can utilise them better without relying on certain players, unlike Tuchel did. So I actually think Graham Potter this year will do better than Tuchel did. I think Graham Potter will actually do a better job than Tuchel this season, at least, or in the future. So was it the right decision to sack Tuchel? Oh, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I'm not sure. I think it really depends. I think Potter will probably do a better job than Tuchel, but it's not guaranteed, never guaranteed. That's the thing with sackings, it's a risk. But I do think he will do better. But you've got to consider someone's like job, what they've done for the club. I think they shouldn't have sacked him. I think Tuchel is a manager that would have found a way. I think he is a manager that would have found a way to get this team going again, and it might have taken even after the World Cup maybe, but I think he would have got them firing. I think he needed give him a few more months to work with more players. You know, how to use Conor Gallagher maybe in a better way. Aubameyang, the three, you know, Koulibaly, Fofana, maybe he would have tried Cucurella in a left centre back or done something. But I do think he's one of the most tactical managers we've seen in the Premier League. And I think he would have changed something eventually at Chelsea. And I really like him as a manager. Let me know what you think or what you would have done with Thomas Tuchel. But let me know what you would have done if you were Todd Bowley. Would you have sacked him and brought Graham Potter in? Or would you have kept Thomas Tuchel? I'm very interested to know. If you have enjoyed the video, give it a like. Subscribe for more videos, and thank you for watching.